What's up, guys? Today is all about the spinnerbait. We're going to do some modifications to them. This is kind of something I do in the wintertime. You know, it's kind of cold, a little rainy outside. I'm not fishing today. So I always do this about once a year, and I try to get all my spinnerbait stuff lined up. This is going to be like a little in my head, like the way I think about spinnerbaits and why I like to do certain things to them. Some of it's for functionality, some of it's for pressure, you know, like fishing pressure and like trying to be different. I'd say a lot of it's just trying to be different, but really trying to get the spinnerbait I want. But I'm going to kind of show you all some of the tricks. They're pretty easy tricks. They're pretty simple stuff. This isn't really complicated, but it does make you think a little bit about like spinnerbaits and why you throw them. I'm going to have all my setup here, and you don't need much, right? Let's dive on in, guys. If you're new to this channel, please subscribe. Check it out, man. There's all kinds of stuff in here. I do a lot of stuff with baits. I do a lot of stuff about fishing. I'm always trying to do something. I'm not the guy that's trying to be overly creative to, like, you know, make the most incredible spinnerbait that no one's ever seen before. I'm just trying to do stuff that really has a lot of functionality to it, and kind of like just different enough. A lot of times you just have to be just different enough to make something like to where you can get a couple more bites than everyone else. So that's what I'm here to show you all today. So let's get started. This is pretty much almost all the spinnerbaits I own, other than stuff that I already have. So this is like either stuff in packages, open spinnerbaits, spinnerbaits from, man, some of these spinnerbaits are 20 something years old. I'm just one of those guys, as long as the hook's good, I keep spinnerbaits. So I mean, I've got spinnerbaits, I don't even know what that is. Is that a Stanley spinnerbait? Like, you know, who knows? I just keep all my spinnerbait stuff, and a lot of it's for blades and parts. And so over the last year, I'd say when I was fishing the tour, I would be making spinnerbaits a lot for some of these spinnerbait tournaments, right? Where we knew we were going to go throw a spinnerbait the whole time. So I kind of invested in one of these. All I started doing was kind of like keeping parts, right? Sometimes I need some copper blades, or I need, like, this is one of my favorite blades. They're kind of called a lot of different things. I always kind of called them like a turtleback blade. They kind of make different ones. And if I wanted that, I might go buy blades, and I only needed one, right? But they might give you 5. So I just started keeping all this stuff. And that way, if a spinnerbait does mess up, gets rusty, I usually just go ahead and cut the wire and take all the parts and start making and start accumulating parts. That way, man, if I ever need something, it's usually right here. So I've got all that, like I said, beads, everything. I used to do this a long time ago. They used to make a Terminator spinnerbait that I used to throw. It was right when Terminator came out. And on Livingston, I just didn't want to throw the same thing. So like I instantly got him, and I would cut this part of it out. Right, so I'd only have one blade. A lot of it was a blade like this, and it would have one blade, and it used to thump really good just with that one blade. It used to just get a lot of thump, and I could throw it way down. And we used to catch a lot of our fish that way. And so I started kind of realizing that, you know, I wanted certain spinnerbaits for certain different things. As I've moved along, I've always just found certain spinnerbaits that I liked. And then when I got with Strike King, they made tons of them, right? And they made a ton of different styles, and I had to kind of get used to all of them, right? I had to learn what all of them did. And one of the ones that I really, really liked was, let me see it, was the bottom dweller. You know, spinnerbaits are kind of always known for going, you know, 5 foot or less, right? And when the bottom dweller came out, you know, it's a spinnerbait that goes a lot deeper. And basically all they did was make it a lot heavier, and they made smaller blades on it, right? And so what happens is it'll get down there, it'll stay down closer to the bottom, and with those smaller blades, the bigger they are, make your spinnerbait rise. Different kinds of blades. As a, you know, if you notice, these are willow leaf blades. Willow leaf blades are going to tend to make stuff go further down. It won't make your spinnerbait rise as much. Colorado blades, they're going to make your spinnerbait rise. So all the bottom dwellers, as you can see, all have 2 willow leaves, and they're usually smaller than what you would actually need on a spinnerbait to keep it down. So I was always trying to get spinnerbaits to go down a little bit deeper, and I wanted them to go faster down there. And I ended up liking this bottom dweller. A lot of the times though, we were throwing stuff around cover, and it might be 2 or 3 foot, but we were going and kind of hunting around big fish. And I started realizing that sometimes that big, bulky, just real obnoxious spinnerbait, and usually you're going to get obnoxious by doing a couple things, right? By getting it heavier, by getting it louder, getting it more thump, but keeping that speed, right? Because I wanted the speed there. I started throwing this 3/4 ounce around a lot shallow. So, but what I didn't like about it is if you're going to throw it shallow, I wanted it to make that thump. So I started going, man, I like the setup, but the blade's too small. I like the first blade, but the second blade wasn't big enough. Well, I'd go to this 1 3/8, and at the time I was like, man, I'm gonna put this one bigger blade on there. And it was the same type of blade as this, so I knew it matched, but we're just talking one difference. And just that one size up blade made this 3/4 ounce spinnerbait really thump. Like I could really feel it a lot better. So I was always really good in contact with it. So man, I would sit it around for forever. And like, here's one, right? That's a 1 3/8 ounce spinnerbait with the blade gone. And I can tell you how many of these 3/4 I have with that bigger blade that I replaced for those certain situations. All these spinnerbaits, you can see, blades are gone, right? There's blades gone on so many of them where I changed the blade, okay? So I've done that, and to be honest with you, I don't have those spinnerbaits with me. Those are in my boat. Those are spinnerbaits that I know what they are for, and so I keep them in my blade coffin in my boat. What I wanted to show y'all is that like all these spinnerbaits that I have, like some of these, I might just take one of these red blades off and put it on this blade, you know, put it right here. If you can see, I've actually, a lot of these that I've messed with, you can tell that I have changed that wire. I mean, and I'll get into that. I'll show you all I do. I'll do one to another spinnerbait. Let's do that right now so y'all can see what I'm talking about. This is pretty much all you need. I brought some other tools in here. Sometimes you might need a screwdriver to kind of pry it open, and wire cutters. Sometimes you don't really need this. Sometimes you do. Just depends on how tough that wire is. This was like my favorite hat just to spinnerbaits. So this is a 3/4 ounce spinnerbait. So this is the spinnerbait I actually want to use, okay? That's why I keep these big ones around. Something you can really grab a hold of. And once you kind of get it going a little bit, you can kind of get in there. Now I don't want to bend it too much. I just want to bend it just enough. And that's all I really had to do was just take that off. I'll take that 1 3/8 ounce, open that up, do the same thing. Like I said, I can already tell that one is smaller, so I'll take them big ones, open it up. Like I said, I don't want to open it up too much because I really don't want to mess up the integrity, because I won't have to do too much. It's enough to get that out. Put that on there. Now, when you're closing these back up, you want to kind of get it. Hopefully y'all be able to see. You want to go at the same angle. That's why I get these. And just close up. Make sure that when you do it, make sure you do it that it can't get out of there. So you want to close them up just good enough, like all the way, basically where it's touching. Even if it overlaps a little bit on the side, that's not going to hurt anything. Even if it goes like that, it's still harder to get out. Just that little modification right there, man, I can feel that spinnerbait so much more. And it's not even that bigger of a blade, but it is. And so you're just that. I'm telling you guys, it meant all the difference in the world on being able to feel this spinnerbait that much more. And sometimes, man, when you get a spinnerbait that really works right, you can just feel it. It just feels a lot better. So I know that's a simple deal, but that's the first little easy one you can do. Now, so I really don't want to put this spinnerbait back on this 1 3/8, but I'll keep this spinnerbait. I'm not going to get rid of it because there's nothing wrong with it. I can, at any point in time, take this blade off. And what I'll do is, I have them all, for the most part, gold, silver, and the size of them, I can just put it right back in there. And if I want to put number 5, that's what I just put on there. I can put a number 5 right back here, I can actually take a number 5 out of this. I wanted to show you all how I did it from the beginning. Like I said, after doing this over time, I've accumulated a lot. So I can even go, I got some big ones in there. I can even go with the number 6. I've kept the swivels that thing go on to. I've got all kinds of stuff that I can use. And that's why I keep these old spinnerbaits. Every one of these spinnerbaits has old swivels. I couldn't even tell you, like, look at that skirt on there. That thing's probably 35 years old. But who knows where I even got it. Probably never gonna throw this thing, but I still keep it because it has the components. So I'm just a guy who's never gotten rid of stuff, and I'm kind of glad I didn't. It's a simple modification, but here's what I've learned. Guys from Oklahoma, and I'm giving away secrets right now. Guys from Oklahoma, and if you've seen this, they got real big on replacing and putting one of these red Colorados in the front. And you ever met a guy from Oklahoma throwing a spinnerbait, and he's from Grand? Chances are he's throwing a red blade like that. I keep that stuff in there because a lot of times when I go there, I at least want to make sure, and I'll tie one on and have a blade there. I have a lot of these red spinnerbaits for the same thing. Sometimes it's for the skirt. Maybe I don't want to throw it on this actual spinnerbait, but I'll keep the skirt. They have different blades. Some of them have a different orange head, and I just kind of accumulate these. And I know these are all Strike King, and I'll explain the Strike King stuff. The Strike King for me is when I got with Strike King, I threw a couple of their spinnerbaits, but man, I'm just a guy like, hey, give me every one of y'all spinnerbaits and let me see what all of them can do. More apt to use one of their spinnerbaits and modify it because I already know what it can do. I got used to it. However, this box, old Terminator spinnerbaits. I couldn't tell you how old that is, but it has that one blade on there that I really like. Sometimes it's hard to find these blades if they're not already on a spinnerbait. I've got Sandtone ones, I've got War Eagles, Booyahs. I've got all kinds of different spinnerbaits, and I get them and I keep every one of them. Sometimes it's because of necessity, because I'm somewhere where I need something, but I now have all the materials. Sometimes I just use them for materials in the sense of I never really know, like these baby burners. I mean, look at the small little blades on there. You really never know what you're gonna need. I never mind buying spinnerbaits because once you have everything on a spinnerbait, the head, everything else is replaceable, right? The only thing that can really mess up on a spinnerbait is the hook gets rusted or the wire breaks. I'm not too worried if the hook gets rusted. I can get another body, but the blades always let me mess with stuff. In this box, what you'll see is all kinds of spinnerbaits, and most of them, if they're loose like that, I guarantee you they've all been modified, right? I have tons and tons of different skirts that I can use. This is like literally modified spinnerbaits of me taking blades off some, putting them back on. I probably could have just shown you all that rather than messing up or almost messing up another one. But I've got all these different types of spinnerbaits, black ones, you know, because a lot of the black spinnerbaits will have like a different red blade on there. I really like this black and chartreuse spinnerbait just for the skirt. And you're gonna be like, why didn't you just buy the skirt? Well, sometimes they're perfect the way they are. I just want options. And so I'm always getting options. And what I like to do is, I like to get really big spinnerbaits. I really like the big spinnerbaits the best. Here's how I think about spinnerbaits, guys. Sometimes these spinnerbaits are perfect the way they are, and I don't ever mess with them. And other times what will happen is, if we've had tournaments and situations where when you go to a lake, everyone's throwing a spinnerbait, like everyone. And sometimes just putting something a little bit different. Putting 2 Colorados, putting 2 Indianas, going just a straight, you know, copper is really for a lot of dirty water, but sometimes throwing some copper in there, giving them a different look. Gold in the front, copper in the back, vice versa. 2 golds, 2 silvers, whatever it might be. I might want a spinnerbait in a certain situation. The reason they make so many different sizes is because of the depth of water you want to go in. And what I mean by that, sometimes you want to go really, really fast with a spinnerbait, So you might want a big spinnerbait to go fast, might want a small one to go fast. A lot of other times you got real dirty water, so you're wanting something that's really bright, that really throwing a lot of water. Really, I mean, you might want to go just to an enormous blade, like something like that. And what you'll do is a lot of those blades come on really big spinnerbaits, and heavy spinnerbaits. But sometimes you might want it on something like a 1/2 ounce, just because you're throwing it in a foot of water, but you really want to create a lot of disturbance. Sometimes you want to wake a spinnerbait. When I wake one, most of the time I want like Colorado blades, because the Colorado will, like I told you earlier, will make it lift, you know, and it's going to put out more, displace more water on top or around the blade, which will make more of a wake on top. So it's all those things about spinnerbaits is why we do what we do to them. Do not throw your spinnerbait stuff away. I mean, there is stuff that is old, and like you can see, there was, for some reason, on this spinnerbait, I wanted the blade that was on the back of that. Couldn't tell you what was on the back of it, but I kept it. Bring all these usually when I travel around in tournaments, because we get in these situations, like I won't have to worry about probably buying a spinnerbait for the next 5 years, guys. I mean, I have almost everything I need right here to either have what I need or to build what I need. And I showed you the easy way to build a spinnerbait. I'm gonna show you the harder way, like what you have to do if you want to take the entire spinnerbait apart. So most times what's gonna happen is like the other spinnerbaits, you're gonna get them out. And this you're not gonna have to worry about. If you're gonna change everything on a spinnerbait, sometimes, if at all possible, a lot of times they'll break. But what you're gonna wanna do is, if you can get away with straightening this without having to cut it, you can straighten it. Now it has to be straight enough to get this part out right here, okay? And sometimes you can get away with doing it. You make that straight enough. Not only do you have to make it straight enough to get it off, the BBs are sometimes hard to get them off too. So sometimes, okay, that's straight enough. So they all slide out, and that slid out. So now you just got, you got that, guys. That's what you got. And I got it straight enough. The reason I don't want to, if I don't have to cut it, what's gonna happen is if you cut it, you're gonna make this shank a little bit smaller. Sometimes you might want a smaller shank, but if at all possible, I try not to cut it to keep the shank the length it is. So now, really those BBs, and like I said, I've got so many BBs, right? I'm not worried about BBs. You should always have, you know, BBs. I call them BBs, barrels, whatever you want to call them. So now all I need to do is, say I didn't like this blade, okay? It's a silver blade. Like I said, I'll take this, put it right here. I'm not gonna lie, this was my starter one. Probably gonna get a bigger one. I'm probably gonna use my Bass Mafia one, and because that's actually not the right size, I wanna have more compartments for all my blades, and that way I can organize them better. I want this copper blade on there in the front, okay? So that's all you gotta do. On a spinnerbait, you wanna make sure that this part right here is in front when you're putting it back. Normally they'll put at least one BB in front of it, barrel, whatever you want to call it. It's a little bearing in front of it, and put this one back on. And it's just as easy. Now the old spinnerbaits, they used to put, let's see if y'all can see that piece in there. And really all these things are for spacing. Okay, spacing for your blade. So these actually are very hard if you don't get it straight. Just like that. That's why I don't really like to use those. That's probably the hardest one to put on if it's not straight. I don't need all that on this one, luckily. But say I wanted it further apart, I could just keep on adding more of these. They're pretty light. They're not going to change the weight of them. So put this on yet. What you're going to want to do is start right where you bent it from the beginning and start bending it back a little bit at a time. You can actually get it just a little bit more, about right there. Slide that one on. Like I said, just go enough. Okay, there we go. Now, the only thing you want to make sure on is right there. Don't bend that so tight that this gets stuck in there. You want this free to be able to move around, but you just don't want it to be able to come out. And there you go. You have a spinnerbait. Skirts always coming undone, trash. With a gold blade like that, like very different. And it's gonna look different in the water. And what I found is, man, difference not bad, guys. Like difference really good. A lot of times, like something they haven't seen before. Gonna give off a really different look. And a lot of times when fish see a lot of spinnerbaits, man, you just never know. Like if you know you're catching fish on a spinnerbait, tie a bunch of different ones on. You might be surprised at what just a little change in the way it looks, or the way the vibration gives off. Like it's night and day over getting bit. So guys, that's by Spinnerbait Modification. It's very simple. The combinations you can make are going to be ridiculous in the hundreds. So have fun with that, man. And man, I like to hear about some of y'all's modifications to spinnerbaits, like what y'all do, man. I'm always willing to learn something. So anyways, hope y'all enjoy this, guys. See y'all.